Welcome to Your Healthy Kitchen from Dignity Health Yavapai Regional Medical Center.
Welcome to Dignity Health YRMC's Your Healthy Kitchen. I'm your host, Rita Carey Rubin. You know, according to the AARP, 1 in 3 Americans is now age 50 or older, and by 2030, 1 in 5 will be 65 plus. You know, as the baby boomer generation adds on birthdays, healthy aging has become a hot topic. So our show today is all about healthy aging and the diet and lifestyle habits that can help you reduce your risk of some common age-related ailments, including heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and possibly even dementia. So we know that genetics do have an influence on our longevity and risk for some conditions, but good research shows that healthy lifestyle habits can actually turn off some genes that trigger disease. In fact, the top 5 lifestyle habits for long life and health are regular physical activity, not smoking, having some healthy stress management, getting solid sleep, and enjoying a moderately low-calorie, plant-forward, Mediterranean-style diet. And over the last 20 years, scientists have been looking into a really interesting theory that suggests that all of these healthy habits reduce the risk of disease and disability by cutting back on levels of chronic inflammation in the body. And inflammation can be a normal response of the immune system to a problem or a threat, and we do need some level of inflammatory response to keep us healthy. But when the immune system chronically kicks inflammation into gear, that's when chronic disease can settle in. You know, there's even a term for inflammation-related aging. It's called inflammaging or inflammaging. So I'll dive into more detail about what foods tend to reduce inflammation in our bodies in a minute. But first, let's get cooking. I have a super simple soup recipe to share with you today that's deliciously packed with anti-inflammatory nutrients and phytochemicals. So first, I'm just going to turn on my stove and heat up this. I just have some olive oil in the pan. There we go. Got it on. So just have some olive oil in the pan, about a tablespoon and a half. And I'm just going to heat this up and start with adding some spices. So this is a spinach soup, and it's a really simple recipe. This particular version has some Mediterranean flavors in it, so I'm using lemon and cumin and coriander seed. But the recipe is so simple that you can change up the flavors really to what you might be in the mood for. So you could make it more like a traditional cream of spinach soup with, instead of coriander and lemon and cumin, maybe put a little nutmeg in it, salt and pepper, maybe some cream. You could also make it with chili peppers and cilantro. So lots and lots of variations are possible. So to start this one though, we're going to start with some whole coriander seed and my warm olive oil. So I'm putting in about 3/4 of a teaspoon of whole coriander seed. And I'll also put in a little bit of salt and some freshly ground black pepper. I think I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit. There we go. So this is what I'm doing here is I'm waking up my spices and giving them a little boost in flavor. So any kind of spice, you can wake up or add flavor to that spice by simply toasting it either in a dry skillet or with a little oil like I'm doing now. And like I said, just boosts the flavor. And one thing to keep in mind with your spices is check them every once in a while. Put your nose in there and smell them. And if they're not smelling really fragrant, they've been in your cupboard for 6 months, a year, 5 years, it's time to change them out. So if they don't smell really good, then they're not going to taste really good. And spices also have a lot of phytochemicals, so plant-based chemicals that are anti-inflammatory. And if you can't smell or really taste those spices, that means those phytochemicals have degraded and you're not getting as much of that nutrition from your spices either. So I've got my coriander toasting, and while that's cooking a little bit, I'm just going to chop up some onions. So any kind of onion will work in this recipe. These happen to be some spring onions from my garden, but if you have like a bunch of scallions would work just fine, or a diced white onion, kind of a milder onion works really well with this recipe. And onions are also some of those foods that are really anti-inflammatory. Lots and lots of important phytochemicals. Onions and garlic, of course. And really, onions, eat them raw, eat them cooked. We absorb some of those phytochemicals better when certain fruits and vegetables are raw, and then other ones we absorb really well when they're cooked. So have a mixture. Have a mixture. Eat things raw and cooked, the produce raw and cooked. And you'll be sure to get those anti-inflammatory chemicals, which is really the medicine in food. You'll be able to absorb that better into your body. So I'll add this onion to my pot. And it's starting to sizzle in there. So a couple cups of onion. And I'm just going to cook it down lightly. Like, I don't want to brown the onions. I want to keep the flavor really pretty fresh for this recipe. So I'm keeping an eye on that. And while those are cooking, I'm just going to chop a little bit of a potato. So about 1/3 of a cup. This is a russet potato, which I like in these kinds of soups. The potato is actually going to act as a way to add body to the soup and some richness without adding a lot of fat or cream. And russets work really well for that. So I'm just going to dice this up. And be careful with adding potato, because if you add too much, the soup will taste really starchy, and that then kind of take away from the other flavors. So again, just about 1/3 of a cup, and I'm going to dice it pretty small because I want these to cook up pretty quickly. And if you have some leftover potato, you could certainly save it for another dish, or have it just as a snack. I love raw potato, and put a little salt on it. It's better than a potato chip. And raw potato actually is really good, healthy starch. It's really good for your gut, because it's what we call resistant starch. So it takes a little while to digest, and it gets down into your lower gut and feeds all those healthy bacteria that live down there. And that's another important piece for cutting back on inflammation in your body, is to have a really healthy gut and a good population of those healthy bacteria. So a little raw potato is really awesome. So so next, I've got my greens cooking in here. I've got the potato cooking. And we'll just really cook it until it is just tender, not brown. I have to finish eating my potato here. And while those are getting ready, I'm going to chop up some greens. So this is a spinach soup, but you can use any kind of green. I chose spinach because the spinach is kind of mild and sweet, and it's a good green for just about everybody. But you can be inventive and add some different greens to your mix. So you could add some Swiss chard, or if you want a little extra heat, some mustard greens, really any kind of green that you like, and keep kind of the spinach as a base. And if you're using like fresh spinach from the market and you've got some big leaves with some big stems, go ahead and just take those big stems off. If it's something like this, which is a bunch of baby greens, they can just go right in the pot just like this. Also, when you're cooking this, when the potato's in the pan, keep an eye on it, because as the potato cooks, it'll release those starch molecules start to break up, and it can get a little sticky in there. So if it looks like things aren't moving around and you can't stir things around and it's a little stuck and starchy, just add a little water to release it, and also to pull up all of that stuff that's stuck to the bottom of the pan is a lot of flavor. But right now this is cooking really nicely, so I am going to start adding my greens to the pot. And I'm going to hit the heat a little bit more. There we go. So there's a whole pound of greens in this recipe. It's a lot of greens, and it cooks down, as you know, quite a bit. So this makes about 6 cups of soup. So a powerful dose of green stuff. And greens happen to also be one of those foods that have incredible amounts of anti-inflammatory chemicals. And so get them in any way that you can, cooked or raw. And another thing that's really great about greens is they also have a lot of potassium and magnesium and calcium. And those nutrients we know are really important for keeping your blood pressure under control. This soup is also great for reducing blood sugars. You know, it's really low glycemic index. So lots and lots of benefits right there. So let's let this cook. And while that's cooking, let's talk a little bit about some other foods that are known to help to reduce inflammation. So we have greens, we have onions, we have spices, but some other foods that actually have been studied really well and show good anti-inflammatory actions include ginger. You could add ginger to the soup, it would be really yummy. Turmeric, green tea, rosemary. All herbs and spices are good, but rosemary seems to be particularly good. Walnuts, flaxseed, and then also fruits and vegetables that are dark red and purple. So I have a couple things over here on the counter. This is just some red and green chard. So that's a reddish purpley color right there on those leaves. That's just some red leaf lettuce, which has a purpley tinge, little head of radicchio. Other things would be beets and purple cabbage, so purple kale. There's purple potatoes. So look for that color. So you're looking for dark color. So dark green, dark red, dark purple, and blue, like blueberries. Just really loaded with beneficial phytochemicals that reduce inflammation and protect you from all kinds of disease. So I'm going to let this spinach cook down a little bit more. And basically what I'm doing is I want the spinach to be just basically wilted. I don't want to overcook it. So just keep giving it a stir. And in a minute, I'm just going to add a little liquid to the pan, which will help it cook down a little bit more. So for your liquid, you can use just water because this soup has a lot of flavor. Or you can use a broth, a vegetable broth or a chicken broth. And whatever kind of flavor you're looking for. And it'll be a cream soup without the cream, so that potato is going to help thicken things up a bit. So while that's cooking, let's talk about berries. So among fruits, berries of all kinds seem to be the most nutritious. So I have another recipe to share with you that's a really fun and delicious way to prepare strawberries. And at this time of year, the strawberries are definitely out and in the markets. Sometimes they taste really great and sweet, and sometimes they might be a little tangy. So this recipe helps you really boost the sweetness in the strawberries and also concentrate the nutrients that are there. So it's a roasted strawberry recipe using some balsamic vinegar and a little maple syrup. And super easy to make. Just wash your strawberries and dry them really well. Because when you're roasting things, you don't want them to have a lot of moisture on them, because basically you won't get the roasting won't happen so much, where you're getting some nice caramelization of the sugars. If there's a lot of moisture on the food when you roast that food, the food actually just starts to steam. So it'll cook, but you don't get the same benefits as you would when you put them in dry. And I'm just cutting the bigger strawberries in half, and if I have a really big strawberry like this, I'll probably cut this into thirds. Looking for strawberries that are about the same size. If I have a smaller strawberry, I'll just like that, I'll just throw that in whole. I'll cut that guy in half. That's it. Let me give my soup a stir. And it's starting to stick a little bit, so I'm adding a little bit of water. Which helps to speed up the cooking a little bit, also releases some of the flavor and the little starchy molecules that are getting stuck to the bottom of the pan. So let that simmer. So yeah, so all I'm doing to roast the strawberries is adding some maple syrup and balsamic vinegar. So this is about a pound of strawberries. So it's about a teaspoon of maple syrup or honey. So not a lot of sweetener. If you know that those strawberries are particularly tangy, you could probably add a little bit more maple syrup. And just some nice balsamic vinegar. This is a Trader Joe's that I really like. But find a balsamic vinegar that you like. You just like the flavor. And a tablespoon of balsamic. And that is it. That is the recipe. And what I'm going to do is just give it a stir. So you could add flavor to this as well. I've made this with a little freshly ground black pepper. It's really yummy. It's a nice contrast to the sweetness of the strawberries. You can serve the berries hot out of the oven, or let them cool and they stay really well in the fridge. And to roast them, I just have a little bit of parchment paper on my baking sheet, which really helps with the cleanup a lot. And just spread the strawberries out evenly and put them in a 350-degree oven for about 40 minutes. So what you'll see is that the berries get nice and soft and they start to release some juices. And then there's some really nice sauce on the bottom of the pan. So here's what it looks like when it comes out. Just like that. And so you can see there's this, excuse me, there's this really nice sauce that you want to definitely scrape up off of the parchment paper. And stays in the fridge. You can put it in a container in your fridge. It'll stay for several days. And it's really good. We had some last night. We're warm out of the oven on some vanilla ice cream. It was amazing. And you could serve it, like this morning I had some with my granola. You might serve it on some bread, make some bruschetta, maybe with a little bit of soft cheese and some basil. Lots and lots of ways to play with that recipe. So they're super good. Okay, so we have to finish our soup. And the last step is just to blend it up in a blender. If you have an immersion blender, you can just do that. You can use that in the pan as well, or just throw it in any old blender. So I'll just blend up a little bit right now just to show you what it looks like. And add some liquid to it. So if you find that when you're blending it, it's not blending really well, you can add more broth or more water to make it as thick or as thick or thin as you like. I'm just going to do this a little bit at a time. So big noise, hold on a sec. And you'll see, I'll pour this in this bowl. You'll see how beautiful and bright green that is. I mean, you can just feel, you can feel the nutrition right there. And I'll blend this all up together. But to serve it, what I like to do is put a little bit of yogurt on top. And this is just a nice plain yogurt. You could also add some nut milk or some regular milk, or if you really did want to add some cream, go ahead. So just some nice yogurt on there, and then we'll top it with some toasted cumin seeds. So it adds a little crunch and a little more flavor to the soup. So that's it. A super easy spinach soup or a green soup, any kind of greens that you like. So in addition to filling your plate with all of these nutrient-packed plants, you can also reduce your inflammation in your body by cutting back on sugar, animal protein, and processed food. And you'll find lots and lots of other ideas for simple, affordable, homemade meals and snacks at yrmchealthconnect.org. And be sure to follow me on Facebook too, where I share photos and videos of the food I make at home, plus links to my favorite recipe and garden sites on the web. So until next time, eat well and be well, and we'll see you soon.